Welcome to the Deep Dive. We take complex information research, articles, notes like the ones we have today, and we really try to distill it down, find those key insights for you. And today, we're embarking on, well, I think it's a fascinating journey into a really critical topic right now. The role global diasporas can play in pushing for democratic change, especially, in this age of digital authoritarianism. We're going to unpack a pretty compelling, maybe even audacious vision. It comes from a document called Digital Diaspora, Building the Tools of Democratic Change from Abroad by Paramendra Kumar Bhagat. And it makes this powerful argument that for countries stuck under dictatorships or just political stagnation, the real starting point for change, it might not be inside their borders. It might actually be with their citizens living abroad.
Yeah, it's fascinating because it takes this idea of being a diaspora, which you might think of as, well, kind of passive, right? People who've left. And it turns it into this active, really strategic force. The source basically posits that people living in places with free speech, with uncensored info, with legal protections, they're uniquely positioned. They have the raw materials, let's say, to organize, to strategize, and to actually catalyze political change back home.
So that's our mission today. Explore how exactly this could happen, because the author points out pretty sharply that outrage alone doesn't organize a revolution. You need more. It highlights this critical need for, and this is the phrase, purpose-built digital tools. So we'll be diving deep into the specific digital infrastructure the source suggests can empower these diasporas. Help them move, as it says, from passive hope into active leadership.
And that phrase purpose-built is so key, I think. It's not just about using Facebook or Twitter. It's about engineering specific platforms, specific technologies designed to overcome the huge challenges of organizing across borders against a state that's actively watching and trying to shut you down.
Get ready for maybe some aha moments here, because this perspective really shifts how you might think about international activism, about where democratic movements even start. You'll learn about some incredibly innovative concepts, ideas that, frankly, could redefine how change gets ignited in our digital world.
Okay, let's unpack this central idea first. It feels a bit counterintuitive, right? Why does this document argue democracy often has to begin abroad for countries under dictatorships? You'd think it starts at home.
Well, the source is very clear on this. It says the basic conditions you need to organize, to strategize for, real political transformation, things like free speech, uncensored information, legal protections, they simply don't exist inside authoritarian regimes. They just aren't there. The document called the host countries, the free countries, the fertile ground. Fertile ground. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Trying to hold a meeting, print leaflets, even just securely discuss strategy online when you know the state is monitoring everything. When dissent gets you arrested, or worse. It's not just hard. It's often impossible to build anything sustainable or visible.
Right. The risk is just too high.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So connect that to the bigger picture. People who've left, often because of political repression, suddenly they land in places where they do have those tools. They do have that environment. They can speak freely, access all sorts of information. They have legal protections. They can actually organize openly in ways that are completely unthinkable back home. But, and this is the crucial question the source raises, how do you harness that potential effectively? How do you bridge that gap?
So it's not just about being safe. It's about having the ability to operate strategically without constantly looking over your shoulder.
Precisely.
But the document moves past just having the right conditions. It says you need specific action, specific infrastructure. Being safe isn't enough. You got to be strategic.
Exactly. And that's where the quote comes in. What we need are purpose-built digital tools platforms that empower diasporas to become effective political forces, connect with those back home, and build the infrastructure for democratic change safely and securely. This is the core innovation, right? Translating that theoretical advantage living freely into practical, secure mechanisms for change, mechanisms that can reach across borders, potentially punch through digital walls.
Moving from just hoping for change to actually implementing a plan for it.
Yeah, it's about implementation. It sees the digital space not just as a place to talk, but as a place to build the foundations for a new political reality.
Okay, this is where it gets really practical and I think super interesting. The document outlines 6 specific digital tools, plus a bonus one. These are designed to help a diaspora move from that passive hope stage into real active leadership. And these aren't just off-the-shelf apps, right? They're conceived for this very specific, very high-stakes purpose.
Exactly. Each one tackles a specific problem that exiled movements have historically struggled with.
All right, first up, the Diaspora Assembly Platform. They call it Bridge. What exactly is this? It sounds ambitious, like a virtual parliament for exiles.
That's a really good way to think about it, yeah. The document calls it a secure, decentralized digital parliament for the diaspora. And, think about the massive challenge of organizing a huge group of people scattered literally all over the planet.
Different time zones, different languages, maybe different political factions even.
Exactly. How do you build consensus? How do you make decisions legitimately? Bridge aims to solve that with a structured, secure environment. So the features are really geared towards collective action. Things like a verified identity system. This is huge. It's not just a username. It's about making sure participants are actual members of the diaspora, preventing trolls or state agents from disrupting things.
Okay, that makes sense. Keeping it secure.
Crucial. Then regional and thematic working groups. This lets people organize around specific issues or places back home, like a group focused on, say, healthcare reform, or another on human rights in a particular province. Makes it more focused.
Right, so not just one giant chat room.
No, definitely not. It needs structure, and it includes real-time deliberation tools so people can debate dynamically, maybe not all at the same second, but fluidly, and importantly, vote tracking and democratic resolution management. This means they can actually make collective decisions, vote on policies or statements, and have a clear, transparent record of it.
So it's really about building that consensus, forging a shared political platform even when everyone's remote. The document says the purpose is to allow diaspora members to self-organize and build consensus toward a shared political platform.
Which is fundamental, because without that unity, movements can just fragment, right? Or get dismissed as just noise.
Why does this specific tool matter so much?
Well, the source puts it bluntly. It builds structure and legitimacy, two things most exiled movements lack. Think about it. Historically, exiled groups are often seen as fragmented, maybe not very democratic internally.
Yeah, sometimes seen as out of touch, maybe.
Right, or just a collection of individuals. Bridge aims to fix that by providing a transparent, democratic process. It turns those scattered voices into a cohesive political body with a clear mandate from its members. It builds that internal legitimacy, which then helps build external legitimacy with, say, international bodies or even people back home. It says, look, we're organized, we're democratic, we have a plan.
So it's about credibility.
Deep credibility, moving from just being critics to being a potential government in waiting.
Okay, so Bridge helps the diaspora organize itself, but then how do they safely communicate that vision, coordinate actions with people inside the country, especially under heavy surveillance?
Yeah, that's the next massive hurdle. And that's where Whisperlink comes in. The document describes it as an encrypted cross-border communications app specifically designed to resist state surveillance.
Which, in today's world of digital crackdowns, sounds absolutely essential, like life or death essential for activists.
It really can be. And the features reflect that high-stakes environment. It talks about peer-to-peer architecture. This is different from, say, WhatsApp, where messages go through central servers. P2P means messages go more directly between users, making it way harder for a state to just monitor or shut down a central point.
Harder to intercept.
Much harder. Then, self-destructing messages, so sensitive info doesn't stay on devices if they get seized. Standard spycraft, almost, but crucial.
Right.
VPN tunneling is key for getting around censorship those national firewalls regimes put up. Makes your traffic look like it's coming from somewhere else.
Okay.
And metadata stripping. This is really important. It's not just hiding the content of the message, but hiding the data about the data, who messaged whom, when, from where. That metadata can be incredibly revealing even if the message itself is encrypted.
Wow, okay. That's pretty sophisticated.
It has to be. And finally, anonymous user modes for situations where people absolutely cannot reveal their identity. So yeah, it's a suite of security features designed for a very hostile environment. And the core purpose? Simple. Enable safe and trusted communication between diaspora leaders and activists inside authoritarian regimes. This is the lifeline, the conduit.
Without it, the diaspora's plans are just theoretical.
I mean, pretty much. Or they rely on insecure channels, putting people inside at enormous risk. This aims to make that connection reliable and secure.
And the document stresses why this matters. Information flow is the lifeblood of any movement. This keeps it flowing when firewalls go up and repression strikes. It's a direct counter to censorship.
Exactly. It tries to keep that channel open even when the regime is trying its hardest to isolate people and control the narrative. Now, it raises the question, can you really stay ahead of state surveillance? It's a constant arms race technologically. But even if it's not perfectly foolproof forever, the existence of a tool like this, one that people trust, That can be psychologically huge. It reduces that chilling effect, that fear of being watched, which paralyzes so many people.
It empowers people to actually talk, to organize.
Yes, it shifts the balance slightly, makes state control less absolute. It's about making resistance possible.
Okay, so we have organization, bridge, and secure communication, Whisperlink.
Mhm.
What's next? The document introduces PolyLearn, a MOAC-style learning hub. So this is about education.
Yeah, but very specific education. It's about building the human capital needed for a successful democratic transition and, crucially, for governing afterwards. Because, revolutions can fail not just during the fight, but afterwards if there's no competent leadership ready.
Right, winning is one thing, governing is another.
Totally different skill set. So PolyLearn focuses on courses vital for state building. Things like constitution writing, the absolute foundation, nonviolent resistance, strategy and tactics. Transitional justice, how do you deal with past abuses, super complex. Then economics of state building, how do you run an economy after chaos? And tying back, digital security for activists. These aren't like abstract political science courses. They're practical skills for building and running a democratic state.
Very hands-on.
And what's really interesting is the mentorship aspect. It says PolyLearn would connect students with global experts and former exiles who led transitions in other countries. It gives examples like Tunisia, South Africa.
Wow, so learning directly from people who've actually done it.
Exactly. Imagine getting advice on navigating transitional justice from someone who helped set up South Africa's Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or tips on nonviolent strategy from someone involved in the Arab Spring. That's invaluable real-world experience.
It bridges theory and practice in a really powerful way.
It does. It's about transferring that hard-won wisdom.
So the core idea here is proactive leadership development. As the document says, revolutions fail without leadership. This trains the right kind of leaders before they're needed, preventing that leadership vacuum.
Exactly. It's an investment in the future, making sure that when the window of opportunity opens, there are people ready, skilled, knowledgeable people to step up and guide the process.
It addresses that criticism that opposition movements are good at protesting but don't know how to govern.
It tackles it head on. And, it raises that interesting point about the right kind of leaders. The focus on nonviolence, on constitution writing, suggests a specific vision, one geared towards peaceful, rule-of-law-based transitions, learning from history, not repeating mistakes.
It's about building a democratic culture, not just seizing power.
Yeah, a long-term investment in stable democratic governance.
All right, this next one sounds incredibly ambitious too. Cartaforge, an interactive crowdsourced platform for drafting a future democratic constitution. Crowdsourcing a constitution.
Yeah, it's a radical idea, really challenges the traditional image of, a few experts drafting a document behind closed doors. This aims for broad public participation.
How would that even work?
Well, the features are designed for exactly that. Things like clause-by-clause upvoting, so citizens, both in the diaspora and maybe even securely inside the country, could weigh in on specific parts of the Constitution, give direct feedback.
Like Reddit for lawmaking.
Kind of, but with more structure, hopefully. It also includes expert commentary integrated into the platform, providing legal context, historical examples, making sure the discussion is informed, and simulation tools like, what if we adopted this clause? How did it work out in country X? To help people understand the real-world implications. Plus, robust versioning, so you can track how the document evolves, who suggested what, how people voted. Transparency.
So the goal is legitimacy through participation. The document says the use case is to build legitimacy and ownership by having it partially co-created by the diaspora and citizens inside the country.
Exactly. It shifts it from an elite-driven process to something potentially much more grounded in popular will, creating that sense of collective authorship.
And the why it matters is pretty stark. Constitutions are usually written by elites. This one gets written by the people. A powerful claim about inclusive governance.
It really is. And think about the downstream effects. A constitution that people feel they genuinely helped create, they're much more likely to respect it, defend it, feel ownership over it.
Right, it's their constitution, not something imposed on them.
Precisely. It fosters that sense of collective responsibility. And, again, for the international community, seeing a constitution drafted through such an open, participatory process, that sends a very strong signal about the movement's democratic commitments.
It builds trust and legitimacy from the ground up, literally starting with the foundational document.
Yeah, making the foundation itself democratic.
Okay, every movement needs resources, money. So the document proposes Freed Fund, a transparent, blockchain-based crowdfunding tool using crypto for revolution.
Well, using blockchain technology, yeah. The focus is really on transparency and accountability, tackling those age-old problems of funding political movements, especially exiled ones, which can be, let's say, opaque.
How does blockchain help with that?
The key features leverage its strengths. Smart contracts for automated fund release based on milestones. This is cool. Funds aren't just handed over, they're released automatically only when specific, agreed-upon goals are met.
Oh, interesting. So donors know the money is actually achieving something specific.
That's the idea. Proof of impact. Then, donor anonymity where needed, obviously crucial for protecting supporters, especially those inside the country or with vulnerable ties.
Right.
But also public spending reports. Because blockchain is a public ledger, you can, in theory, make spending incredibly transparent. Anyone could potentially audit where the funds are going, building trust through radical openness, so the purpose is broad. Finance journalism, elections in exile, humanitarian aid, or secure tech infrastructure. Basically funding all the different arms of the movement in a way that's auditable and decentralized.
And the core problem it solves. Every revolution needs money. This makes fundraising trustworthy, decentralized, and global. It addresses that vulnerability around funding accusations of corruption, lack of transparency.
Exactly. It aims to build trust with donors and the public by making the financial side incredibly clear and accountable. It tries to legitimize their finances. Now, obviously, there are big questions here. Legal hurdles, international regulations around funding political movements, especially using crypto and anonymity. It's not simple.
Yeah, navigating that seems tricky.
For sure. But the argument is that the transparency offered by blockchain actually helps address some of those concerns. It provides that clear, immutable record. It's about empowering grassroots global support while trying to mitigate the risks through technology.
Turning a potential weakness, shady funding, into a strength. Transparent, accountable funding.
That's the goal.
All right, the last of the core 6 tools is GovSim. This one is about simulating a government in waiting or an interim administration. This sounds like next-level preparation.
It really is. It's moving beyond just planning to overthrow the regime to meticulously planning for governing the day after, building competence and confidence through practice.
So what does it simulate exactly?
It's designed to model the real complexities. Ministry modeling, so mapping out government departments, roles, responsibilities, basically designing the org chart of a future state. Candidate selection processes integrated into it, helping to identify and maybe even train people for specific roles. Meritocracy is the goal there.
Finding the right people for the jobs.
Yeah. And policy sandboxing. This is really interesting. It lets them test out policy ideas, say, a new tax law or healthcare reform in a simulated environment to see potential impacts before implementing them for real. Avoid costly mistakes.
Like a flight simulator for governance.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And budget simulations, practicing how to manage national finances, allocate resources, fiscal responsibility practice. And it suggests collaborating with academics, civil society, think tanks to run these simulations. So you get expert feedback, make it more realistic, more rigorous.
Injecting outside expertise.
Right, grounding it in reality.
So the big payoff here is credibility.
Yeah.
The document says, this proves to the people and the international community that the movement is ready to govern.
Absolutely. It tackles that fear of the unknown, the fear of chaos after a regime falls. If the opposition can concretely demonstrate, look, we've thought this through, we've practiced, we have plans, we have people, that builds enormous confidence.
It reduces the what comes next anxiety.
Exactly. Instead of scrambling after a collapse, GovSim allows for detailed pre-planning. It counters the criticism that oppositions only know how to oppose, not how to build. It fosters confidence internally and externally. It makes the transition seem less like a leap into the void and more like a planned handover.
Demonstrating readiness.
Yeah.
That seems key.
Hugely key.
Okay, and then there's a bonus tool, Civic Pulse. This one is different. It's a crowdsourced alert and data platform operating from inside the homeland, a feedback loop.
Yeah, it's like a digital flare gun almost. Its main function is anonymous, encrypted reporting of human rights abuses, protests, corruption, and more. Empowering ordinary people on the ground to safely document and share what's happening.
Getting information out when the regime wants to keep it hidden.
Precisely. In a place where speaking out is dangerous, this aims to provide a secure channel for citizens to become, essentially, citizen journalists or human rights monitors, feeding real-time data outwards. And the use case is immediate. Diaspora and human rights organizations can respond, amplify, and intervene quickly based on real-time inputs. So a report comes in, it gets verified perhaps, and then boom, it's shared with media, with the UN, with advocacy groups.
Turning individual incidents into documented evidence.
Exactly. Connecting local events to global advocacy instantly. It creates that powerful link.
And the significance.
Yeah.
Keeps the world's attention on atrocities and connects them to a political movement offering hope. So it fights impunity and also ties the struggle back to the diaspora's alternative vision.
Yeah, it serves multiple purposes. It's an early warning system. It's an evidence locker for future justice processes. It galvanizes international action. And importantly, it shows people inside they aren't alone, that their reality is being seen and shared.
It breaks the information blockade from the inside out.
That's the idea, using crowdsourced, encrypted information to counter state propaganda and control. A really powerful concept.
So, putting it all together, these 6 tools, plus Civic Pulse, they aren't just isolated apps. The author calls them a coherent stack for democratic disruption, an ecosystem.
Yeah, designed to work together like different ministries in a functional government, almost.
And the ultimate goal isn't just disruption, right? It's more constructive than that.
Definitely. The document is clear. The goal is not endless opposition. It's to build a meritocratic political party in exile with clear principles and legitimacy.
A party in exile. So moving from being protesters to being a genuine alternative government.
Exactly. A credible, organized, prepared alternative ready to step in. And you asked earlier about legitimacy from exile. The source suggests it comes from using these tools. The transparency of Bridge, the participatory nature of Cartaforge, the demonstrated competence from GovSim. These actions build legitimacy.
Legitimacy earned through process and preparation, not just claims.
Right. It's performative, in a way. You demonstrate your democratic credentials through your actions, even from afar.
Okay, so the document then lays out a 7-step roadmap. How this whole stack leads ideally to actual democratic change. It's quite a journey. Step 1, win the hearts of people back home. This feels fundamental. Connecting emotionally, showing you understand their struggles. Tools like WhisperLink for targeted messaging, Civic Pulse for listening seem key here.
Absolutely. Building that trust, that resonance. Then, step 2, coordinate with underground movements inside the country. This is pure WhisperLink territory. That secure link is the absolute prerequisite for effective joint action, bridging the gap.
Step 3, topple the dictatorship when the opportunity arises. The tipping point. The culmination of all the organizing, presumably triggered by some internal crisis or external pressure, amplified by coordinated action.
Right, the moment of action. Then immediately, step 4, organize a credible interim government. And this is where GovSim pays off. You're not starting from scratch. You pull out the plans, the people you've prepared, stability and competence from day one.
Minimizing chaos. Then step 5, hold elections for a constituent assembly. Swiftly moving towards popular representation, getting the people involved in shaping the next phase, showing commitment to democracy.
Crucial step. And step 6, draft a democratic constitution with the people. Now, Cartaforge takes center stage, implementing that participatory process you hopefully started earlier, making the foundational law truly owned by the citizens.
Embedding democracy right at the core. And finally, step 7, build a truly democratic, accountable, and just state. The long-term vision, the real work of building institutions, culture, ensuring rights, the end goal.
What's really striking is how comprehensive it is. It's not just about getting rid of the old regime. It's a full roadmap for building the new one, anticipating the challenges at each stage with a specific digital tool or strategy. It's remarkably thought through.
It leads the author to make this really bold statement. This is not fantasy. This is a digital roadmap to democracy, one that doesn't wait for permission and doesn't need international approval to start. That's quite a claim.
It is bold. It reflects this deep belief in the agency of the diaspora itself, that leveraging these tools gives them the power to initiate the process independently without waiting for, geopolitical stars to align or foreign powers to intervene.
A kind of self-empowerment through technology, bypassing traditional gatekeepers.
Exactly. That doesn't wait for permission part is key. It's proactive, taking the initiative.
And the document ends with this really powerful warning and call to action. First, the warning to regimes. Every dictatorship underestimates the diaspora until it's too late.
Chilling, but maybe true in this digital context.
And then the call. Let's build these tools. Let's organize our courage. The next democracy may start with an app and a dream rooted in freedom. It connects the tech directly back to that fundamental human aspiration.
It does. But, as we wrap up, it brings us back to that feasibility question. building and maintaining this entire ecosystem. The technical skill, the security needed against state hackers, the sheer coordination across a potentially fractious diaspora. It's a monumental challenge, let's be realistic.
Huge hurdles.
Immense. But the vision is compelling because it offers concrete answers, or at least potential answers, to these incredibly difficult problems that activists have faced for decades. It moves beyond just saying, we want freedom, to saying, here's a detailed, technologically enabled plan for how we get there.
Oh.
It's about providing the means for people to act on those dreams. That's why it feels important, I think.
Wow. What a deep dive that was. We really explored this, well, groundbreaking concept of the digital diaspora. We looked at how these specific purpose-built tools, Bridge, Whisperlink, Polylearn, Cartaforge, FreedFund, GovSim, plus CivicPulse, how they could potentially form this comprehensive roadmap for democratic change, driven from abroad.
Yeah, we've seen how the vision tries to tackle those historic weaknesses. Lack of structure, insecure communication, unprepared leadership, opaque funding, elite-driven constitutions, chaotic transitions. It aims to plug all those gaps with specific, technologically driven solutions. It's a remarkably holistic approach, thinking not just about opposition, but about the whole life cycle, right up to building a functioning democratic state.
And this deep dive really underscores the power of technology, not just connecting people, but organizing them, empowering them, even across continents and despite intense repression. It really forces you to rethink where change can actually begin, maybe not always from within.
And the framework we explored, it's so specific, so actionable, it moves past vague ideals into these concrete digital mechanisms. It really embodies that idea that knowledge, combined with the right tools and strategy, can be incredibly powerful, a blueprint for agency.
So what does this all mean for you listening to this as you reflect? Maybe consider how the digital age is doing more than just changing communication. Is it fundamentally reshaping political power itself? Reshaping the pursuit of freedom? Could it be that the most potent force for change in some situations does reside with this globally connected, digitally savvy diaspora? And if that's even partially true, well, what responsibility does that place on those of us living in relatively free societies? To understand these dynamics, maybe even to support such innovations. It's a profound question about where the future of democracy might be forged.